Hello, and thank you for joining us for our webinar, Getting Started with the Clery Center Collaborative, presented by the Clery Center for Security on Campus and AICCU. My name is Bethany Lamolinara, and I'm the Member Services Manager here at the Clery Center, and I'll be helping to moderate the webinar today. A few housekeeping items before we get started. We encourage you to interact with our speakers by typing in questions and comments using the questions pane throughout the presentation. We'll be answering questions live both during the presentation and directly after, if time permits. If you have any problems, click the raise your hand button and we'll send you a private message to get you squared away. We are recording today's session and we'll send you the link to the recording and the slide deck within 24 hours of the webinar's conclusion. We'll also post the recording and materials online. I'm joined today by my colleague Samantha Cook, Director of Strategic Initiatives here at the Clery Center. Also joining us today are Kristen Soares, President of AICCU, and Veronica Villalobos-Cruz, Vice President of External Affairs at AICCU. At this time, Kristen, would you like to say a few words of welcome?
Thank you, Bethany, for getting squared away here. Thank you. I just, on behalf of AICCU, want to welcome the members who are participating today. Veronica Villalobos is also here with me, and the association is pleased to bring this new membership program on behalf of our members, and AICCU is located in Sacramento. Some of you we have worked with. We primarily handle the legislation and public advocacy on behalf of our member institutions, and this is an issue that has been growing, and we're just pleased to be working at the Clery Center to provide this resource and the training, the tools in an area that's changing, and I know you'll address that later, so I just want to say welcome to all our members, and thank you, Bethany and Samantha.
Thank you, Kristen. So today we'll give you a little bit of background about the Clery Center. We'll discuss the current landscape and Clery Act updates. We'll also discuss common compliance challenges and how to build a multidisciplinary team through the collaborative program. We'll also share some member feedback and successes and discuss a little bit about the partnership with AICCU and what exactly that means. And then at the end, we'll take some questions and be happy to provide you with some answers. So first, we have a poll just to get started. How would you rate your campus's current Clery Act compliance efforts? So we ask if you all can take just a couple of minutes and answer the poll that just popped up on your screen.
And this is Sam Cook from the Clery Center. It's worth noting these are completely anonymous. So if you're looking at the poor we need help answer and you're worried that this is information that you don't want to share, it is completely anonymous, and we really appreciate your responses. Okay, so it looks like we have just about everyone voted. I'm going to just quick share. I'm going to close the poll and then share the results. So it looks like we have a few of you, about 20%, excellent or very good. Some of you are right there in the middle with average. A good bulk of you in the okay but need some work category. And then just a few of you in the very honest, poor, we need help category. So thank you so much. That information is really helpful for us in terms of knowing sort of where you all are coming from as you join us for today's webinar. And as Bethany mentioned, and as Kristen talked about, we are so excited about this project and this initiative in partnership with AICCU. We're going to talk a little bit today, actually a lot today, about an initiative that we're very excited about, which is our collaborative program. But I did want to go through just a little bit for those who may be familiar or not familiar with the Clery Act and with our organization. We want to provide a little bit of an overview of what our organization does and the work we do around the Clery Act in particular. So what is the Gene Clery Act? For many of you, it's probably something that you think about on a daily basis. Some of you might be new, though. The Clery Act is our organization's major policy accomplishment. And so the Clery Center was founded over 27 years ago by Connie and Howard Clery following the death of their daughter, Jean. Today, we partner with institutions, campus professionals to provide training and education. We have a membership program, which is what we're talking about with you all today. And we're really excited. We lead national conversations with policymakers, higher education leaders, and all of you to really discuss policies and issues affecting campus safety across the country. So we're very excited to have all of you with us today. The Clery Act, as I mentioned, Connie and Howard Clery founded our organization following the murder and rape of their daughter, Jean, in her residence hall at Lehigh University in 1986. And at the time, there really was no federal legislation that was guiding how institutions should prevent or respond to campus crime. And so what Howard and Connie really wanted to do was attempt to create a framework in which parents wouldn't have to go through what they went through with their daughter, Jean. And so through that, they founded our organization. We used to be called Security on Campus, so some of you may have heard of our organization before. We were recently renamed to the Clery Center in order to honor our co-founders and to honor Jean's legacy. And so we do a lot of work around legislation, advocacy, awareness raising, as well as training and technical assistance with colleges and universities. So in terms of the Clery Act, and for those of you who have been to one of our trainings, you know that this is going to be a really quick overview for something that we normally spend about 12 hours training on. So these are the basics, though, when we think about what the Clery Act requires and provides. These are sort of the basics of what the Clery Act involves. So every year, and actually coming up pretty soon on October 1st, you have to publish your annual security report. And this report includes policy statements from everything on your emergency notification and response procedures all the way to the rights and options that you provide for victims and survivors of sexual assault. It also includes your annual crime statistics. This is probably what it's most known for. You're going to include those 3 years of campus crime statistics for the Clery geography of on-campus, non-campus, and public property. But the annual security report also provides information about rights and options, as I mentioned before, for survivors of sexual assault. And most recently, through the Violence Against Women Act, they actually have also added domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking to those crimes. And so this year, institutions were asked to make a good faith effort to comply with those amendments by including information as much as they can and those crime statistics in their annual security report for those new crimes. There's also ongoing disclosure. So in addition to that annual information that you're asked to provide, there's also ongoing disclosures in the form of emergency notifications, timely warnings, and also your daily crime log. And then finally, as many of you know, the U.S. Department of Education enforces the Clery Act. There are some fines that are involved, about $35,000 per violation. And enforcement has definitely increased over the last couple of years, which we'll get into shortly. So in terms of the Clery Act crimes, this is a list. It's considered in a hierarchy. So in terms of counting those crimes and presenting them in your crime statistics tables, these are sort of the crimes that are focused in on for the annual security report and for your ongoing disclosures. You'll note at the bottom we did add dating violence, domestic violence, and stalking through the VAWA amendments. These have not yet been placed in the hierarchy. We're expecting final regulations for that to come out from the Department of Education in November. So stay tuned for that. We'll talk a little bit more about those amendments shortly. So what does this all mean in practice? We train, as I mentioned, all across the country, around 1,000 professionals every single year in different states. And so one of the things that we often hear is the compliance challenges that go along with the Clery Act. These are listed from Department of Education's program reviews. As I mentioned, enforcement of the Clery Act has really stepped up recently. And so one of the things that that does is it provides us more information about what the Department of Education is looking for when it comes to Clery Act compliance. So these are some of the most common challenges that the Department of Education has identified through those program reviews. What you'll notice is geography. As I mentioned before, there are 3 categories. Oftentimes there's difficulty in the day-to-day to keep track of what it is that you own and control and what does that mean. We often use the example that in 1990 when the Clery Act was passed, the perception of what a campus looks like was very traditional, and you could almost draw a map with sort of a square border, and that's your campus. We know that as higher education has changed and as the needs of students have changed, that landscape has also changed as well. And so for many campuses, probably most campuses, geography has become an increasingly complex concept to implement on their campuses. We also look at reporting. We just launched a campus security authority training. For those of you who are in the weeds with response and reporting on your campus, you know that there are reporting requirements under the Clery Act as well as under Title IX. And so for many campuses, they struggle with how do I identify who my campus security authorities are? If I have confidential roles on campus, how does that intersect? And then, of course, with the increased guidance from the Department of Education's Office on Civil Rights for Title IX, reporting also had kind of an increased complexity to it with the Dear Colleague letter. Beyond that, there's also those inconsistent and non-existent policies. So we talked about the annual security report briefly as an opportunity or a place where all of your policy statements exist. One of the biggest challenges that we've seen is the fact that, sometimes in the effort to get an annual security report finished and out the door by October 1st, there is information about policies or policy statements that don't match up with the actual policies that are in place on a campus. In the worst case, sometimes there are non-existent policies, and so there are those requirements to share what you have, but if you don't have a policy, what does that mean? Beyond that, documentation, I think, particularly as IT has gotten more complex and technology has grown, much like geography, it's become something that often creates a challenge for campuses. So there is a record-keeping requirement under the Clery Act of 7 years for all of your information that sort of supports Clery Act compliance. As different departments own and control different records, that becomes a challenge. Do you know where everything lives on your campus that relates to your compliance efforts? Lack of training and lack of coordination are two areas that we hear about often, and ironically, usually at our trainings. And so one of the things that we really focused on in the program development aspect of the collaborative was trying to identify and address particularly these last 3 or 4 challenges. So for training, we recognize that there's a lot of information out there about Clery Act compliance, and it can be really difficult to kind of, fund the ability for your whole team to go to a training and learn together, and then support through that shared knowledge and shared language coordination on your campus. And that really kind of all leads up to what we probably hear most often, which is a lack of institutional support or buy-in. And what's interesting is this, again, is language that's coming directly from the Department of Education. And so they've actually identified that a lack of institutional support, whether it's not receiving enough investments or training in the day-to-day work that goes into compliance, but also just a culture of compliance on your campus. If you don't have that institutional buy-in from leadership, it can be incredibly difficult, almost impossible, we would argue, to really do Clery compliance well. And then, of course, the other final piece is that the Clery Act is an unfunded mandate. And I say that because we recognize that for many campuses, it is very challenging to really balance the need to invest in these increasingly complex requirements while there is really very limited funding available. And we certainly recognize that the Clery Act isn't the only requirement or federal law that institutions of higher education have to comply with, so that's certainly a challenge. I'm going to pause briefly and see if anyone has any questions, because I know I kind of blew through all that information very quickly. If you do, just as a reminder, there is the questions panel that you can send those in. We'll be happy to answer any questions throughout the presentation. All right, well, moving on. Compliance is an institutional responsibility. So we talked about this already, but I think it's worth hitting home. If you look at the requirements of the Act, if you look at what it's asking institutions to do and to provide, it becomes really clear that compliance has to be an institutional responsibility, and it's something that touches on really everybody's jobs and everybody's responsibilities on campus. With the new VAWA amendments, I think this becomes even more highlighted, particularly in terms of human resources being involved, that component of sort of having them trained or training new and incoming employees as well as new and incoming students really highlighted that need. But we also know that students interact with a lot of different folks on campus, right? So faculty and academic affairs are just as involved. in keeping your campuses safe in our mind as campus safety department itself. And so you want to make sure that, again, if it's considered, if campus safety is considered to be a responsibility of just one person or one department, we would argue that that's probably not putting your campus in a good place in terms of compliance, but then more broadly, creating safer environments for your community as a whole. So we really see this as something that needs buy-in from multiple groups. Of course, one of the challenges with that, which we'll get into, is that oftentimes people do feel siloed. They feel separated in the day-to-day work and with all the other responsibilities that go on a campus. It can be very difficult to feel like Clery Act compliance is something that a whole team can get around, and how do you get that buy-in if it doesn't exist? We think we've come up with a solution through our program, which we'll talk about later. But I think it's worth noting that this is probably the biggest barrier to success that folks have identified for us when we go to our trainings. And it really got us thinking how we could solve this problem to create safer campuses. So finally, in terms of our policy and landscape, I wanted to note that it really has been quite a busy year, both for our organization, I know for all of you here today. Veronica and Kristen and Bethany and I were all talking a little bit before we jumped on the webinar, and it's really kind of crazy to think about how much has gone on just in the past year alone, and certainly in the years preceding. It's been very busy, and it's been very eventful. And so I think it's worth noting that in addition to all of these requirements and challenges that quite frankly have existed since 1990, since the Clery Act has passed, that those requirements are all now within the context of an environmental landscape that is really rapidly evolving. There's a couple pictures on here on this slide, and actually last week another thing happened with the It's On Us campaign through the White House. So it's one of those issues that really the headlines, the attention to it, just doesn't seem to be going away. And so we're really excited that there's been a national dialogue that started around issues, particularly of sexual violence on college campuses. But we know that that creates some challenges as well as opportunities for your campuses. So just a few highlights, and then looking ahead. As I mentioned, student activism and media attention has really been unrelenting. And I think that for us as an organization, it's been really exciting to see students really taking charge of their own safety and taking charge of their stories. I think certainly from the campus perspective and from folks that we train, one of the difficulties that that's created is this need to really be more proactive and to take a look and where do you start, given that there has been so much media attention, particularly when things aren't done well. And so for campus professionals that we work with, they're really trying to navigate those legal and policy requirements that have already existed, along with the pressure of their students and others to really do better, to do as much as they can. Again, all keeping in mind that unfunded mandate piece. So within our budget, how do we do all of that? In addition to some of that on-the-ground activism that's happening, we also had the Violence Against Women Act reauthorization, which amended the Clery Act. And that happened last March, March of 2013. Negotiated rulemaking for that happened earlier this spring. Our executive director was actually one of the negotiators who helped sort of come up with those draft regulations along with other committee members. And then earlier in the spring as well, there was a White House task force that I'm sure many of you heard about, really addressing campus sexual assault. There was a Not Alone website and report that was released in April. And also, along with that, the Department of Education Office for Civil Rights also provided increased transparency regarding their expectations and enforcement of Title IX. And so Title IX is one of those things that really intersects with Clery. We do a lot of training around how it intersects, and that's something that certainly we know a lot of members and folks have questions about. And then finally, in California, we wanted to throw this in because I know that a lot of you are thinking about this. There is the bill that talks about affirmative consent. And so we know in California there's been a lot of activity in addition to that national federal activity in terms of thinking about institutions' role regarding sexual violence. So on the horizon, we're expecting those final regulations in November. We also have a couple of proposed bills. We've highlighted one here. The Campus Accountability and Safety Act from Senator McCaskill and some of her colleagues. But there's others as well. I think in July there was one week where 3 bills were dropped all at once. And so there's a lot of policy activity as well in terms of how do we translate that student activism and those expectations into perhaps additional legislation. So just things to be aware of. that are on the horizon. So where do we go from here? And it's a good question, and it's one that we asked when we were developing the program about 1.5 years ago. Between the lack of institutional support, a really tumultuous environment, and increased federal oversight of Clery Act and Title IX compliance, we really felt like we needed to create a program that addressed those common challenges through collaboration in order to meet those needs. So I wanted to start with a quote, and it's one of my favorites. And for those who know me here in the office, they really definitely understand that I'm a little bit of a nerd. So I do apologize, but I really love Scott Page's research. He talks a lot about the power of diverse teams versus individuals at solving problems. And so one of the quotes I love from his research is up here on the screen: diverse groups of problem solvers outperformed the groups of the best individuals at solving complex problems. And the reason the diverse groups got stuck less often than the smart individuals who tended to think similarly. I love that quote for a couple reasons, and it's actually ironic because I think when I was in school I hated group projects, so it may be something that I sort of challenged me a little bit. But I think particularly in higher education, we're really lucky we work with the smartest people out there. But that phrase of getting stuck really resonated with me, and in our work with folks who are doing Clery Act compliance, I think a lot of people feel stuck when it comes to what do I do? How do I do this better? So many people that we meet with and we train with want to do this better, and they want to make it as good as it possibly can, and they want to create these safe communities. But whether it's I can't get this training that I've wanted for forever, or I feel really passionate about this, but I'm the only person on my campus who does, it often feels like a stuck cause. And so I wanted to throw this out there because I think one of the inspirations that we had from the program was actually from training participants who said, I feel like I'm so inspired and so excited when I come to a training. I get to connect with all of these amazing different people who all feel as strongly as I do that this is something that we need to get right. And then I come back to my campus and I feel stuck. And so the collaborative was really built from the concept that we need to keep that excitement, that passion, and that collaboration going beyond one training, beyond 1 or 2 days a year. So this is an image of what I think those diverse groups of problem solvers looks like. And this is actually an image that was taken from one of our trainings with a member institution. And this is actually their Campus Security Authority training. And what I love about this picture and what I loved about the training is that it really represented Scott Page's research in action in my mind, and really the spirit of the collaborative program. So this group had everybody. It had athletic department representatives, it had representatives from campus ministry, from student life, student conduct, health and wellness, counseling. Everyone that you could think of and name was in that room. And one of the amazing things that happened that was really different from when we usually train with just one type of group is that they were able to learn together and learn with and from each other, which was really fantastic. So when someone had a question about confidentiality, for example, we didn't have to answer that question because there was someone in the room from a different department who really lent their perspective and their expertise to that discussion. So often when we think about the landscape and when we think about the work that we do as an organization, what we're always struck by is this sort of contrast between perceived experts who are outside of the institution, people that you have to hire, people that you bring in to tell you what to do. And when we go to our trainings, what we're always blown away by is the expertise that really exists within your institutions. There are so many smart people and brilliant people who are on your campuses. And so our idea with this program is to really bring those folks together, leverage that talent, leverage that expertise and passion, and really create something that is custom to your campus and that really turns that expertise into tangible action. So what's the collaborative? The collaborative is, as I mentioned, it's a team-based learning membership program that brings together colleges and universities to build effective, customized, and sustainable approaches to campus safety and Clery Act compliance. We launched this program in 2013. We piloted it with a group of about 35 institutions from Pennsylvania, and we've since expanded the program nationally. The collaborative is really built off of 4 major concept areas. And so when we were thinking about tackling that problem of silos and how do we bring folks together and provide resources that people need, we thought about it in these 4 major categories of resources and tools. And so one of them is learning. So through the collaborative, we provide different workshops and events. We also have networking and support as a key role, along with resources and self-assessment. And we'll go into each of these kind of specifically in just a moment. But the idea is that all of these things work together. You can't just have a program that involves training. You also need that support element of it, whether it's support from each other, from your peers at different institutions, or support through our organization through technical assistance. And self-assessment is such a huge part. Once you learn, once you have that support, how do you evaluate and know that what you're doing is working and happening the way that you want it to? And so we see all of these areas really feeding into each other to create a comprehensive compliance program. So for learning, we're really excited. This is really where it started. As I mentioned, we were inspired by our training participants, and so we knew that learning was going to play a key role in the collaborative. And we're really excited to offer great membership benefits specific to trainings. So through the collaborative, members experience exclusive workshops and trainings. A great example of that was recently we had a member of the Department of Education's Clery Act compliance team give a presentation on study abroad and Clery compliance immediately following one of our Clery Act training seminars. And so this was something that was only available to members of the collaborative and something that members were really able to benefit from through that direct conversation. We also provide free in-person and online training. So we've talked a lot about our Clery Act trainings. One of the biggest benefits of the program is that you can really attend these trainings at a reduced cost. And the first 5 registrations online are free. And the first 3 for in-person are also complimentary. We're very excited. We'll give you the training schedule at the end of this presentation, but we're very excited to have 2 California trainings in 2015. And so what this means is if you join the collaborative, there's really an opportunity for 2 separate events that you all can attend for free if you join the program next year in 2015. So we're really excited about that. And then finally, as I mentioned before, we did recently launch a Campus Security Authority training video. And it's worth noting that this actually was a project that was inspired through our collaborative members themselves. We had always had a PowerPoint that we shared with our members that talked about how to train campus security authorities, but to be perfectly honest, it was a little bit dry. And so the feedback from many of our members was, can we get something that is appealing not just to the professionals who have to go through this every single year, but also to students, something that's really universally understood and engaging. So that's something that you also would get for free through the program, and we also have some supplemental materials that we provide with that as well. So we're very excited about that project and excited to share it with all of our members as they kick off the new school year. So the second pillar in terms of networking and support, this is really a core element of the program, this concept that we don't just learn from experts through training, we also are learning through each other and through conversations. And so one of the things we set up, that the collaborative was really built at its heart as a program that is sort of using technology to encourage this collaboration. And so we built a secure members-only website. It's a login accessed area of our website that has an entire slew of resources, which we'll get into in a little bit. But it also includes a discussion board and an opportunity for members to see who else is participating in the program. So if you go to a training or if you participate in a webinar and you hear someone have a really great point and you want to follow up with them, but you can't remember their name, there is a member directory that you can go to and really continue that conversation offline. But we also, in addition to networking with your peers, we also give the opportunity to network and gain support through experts, whether it's the Department of Education, as I mentioned before, through a webinar or a workshop, or any other type of legal expert that we have in our network. We're really excited to share that expertise in really intimate settings where folks have the opportunity to ask questions and gain clarity. And then finally, you get that support from us as well. We really listen to our members in an evaluation process that Bethany will talk about in a little bit. And we really wanted to provide additional support for our members. And so one of the things members asked for, among other things, was a review of their annual security report. So new in 2014 is the option to have one of our staff members really go through your annual security report in draft form, or if you want us to look at what you did last year and really make sure that all of the important pieces are there. And then you also have the option to do a compliance review call to follow up on that. The third pillar is resources, and as I mentioned, we built that member website with a slew of them. There's an online resource library with over 100 documents, webinar recordings, and other reference items. You'll also get a welcome kit, which is really great. It includes a copy of our self-assessment tool, which I'll get into in a minute. But it also includes educational videos, lots of prevention education. If you're interested in sort of seeing our videos and trying those out with your campus, you'll get a copy of those for free in that welcome kit. And then in addition, there's a discount on our entire online store. And then finally, self-assessment. I think this is one of the really unique aspects of our program. As I said before, we really built this so that all of these training elements, networking, support, resources, and self-assessment work together. And I think self-assessment is such an important part of compliance. So we created a comprehensive tool. It goes beyond a checklist to really identify and address all of the major areas of Clery Act compliance. And so we called it our self-assessment tool for multidisciplinary campus teams. And the idea is that you can really go through that with your collaborative team and really identify the areas that are your strengths, areas that maybe you need to work on, and go through that together to really build a comprehensive plan for compliance for your campus and for your team. And to support those efforts, in addition to that toolkit that we provided, we also hosted workshops and consultations with members throughout the year. So when this tool was launched in November, we were able to host 3 or 4 different workshops with members to really go through how to use the tool successfully. Once you identify the areas that you need to improve on, what are some of the resources and training that you can use to address some of those concerns? So we're very excited about this piece. We're hoping in the next year or so to also be able to provide a very comprehensive digital version of this. Currently it's in an interactive form, but we really want to provide something that could also comprehensively track those answers. So stay tuned for that. And then finally, I just wanted to provide a quick snapshot. We've had really amazing experts, as I mentioned before, join us and sort of share their knowledge and experiences with our members in recent months. And so I wanted to highlight a few of those here. We've had a lot of different workshops and webinars exclusively with members that we think really cover a lot of the major challenges and areas that folks are talking about. So among them, you can kind of see the list. There's building a sexual assault response team. We had Paul Sell and Donna Berry at Montclair State talk about their experiences on campuses, building that from scratch. As I mentioned before, we had a presentation from the Department of Ed about study abroad and Clery Act compliance. And then recently, actually in June, we had a presentation from the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. They talked exclusively to our members about clarifying Title IX expectations. And so this was immediately following the launch of those FAQs in April. And so we were really excited to give members the opportunity to ask their questions directly to the department. So I want to pass this over to my colleague Bethany. She's going to talk a little bit about the evaluation of our program and a little bit about members' successes since the program launched last year.
Thanks, Sam. Thank you.
All right.
So sorry about that technical difficulty. So in November 2013, we asked Zero Associates to perform a survey with members of the Collaborative Pilot Program. And we did that because while we were hearing all these fantastic anecdotes about how the program was working on our members' campuses, we wanted data to support those stories. The program was created with the understanding that all of these elements that are shown on your screen, so learning, networking and support, resources, and self-assessment, are valuable, and we all need to work together for compliance efforts to be successful. When evaluating, we asked for feedback in each of these 4 areas, and we were blown away by the positive responses that survey captured. And we used a lot of the feedback garnered in that survey to develop the newest parts of our program. The full report is available on our website, and we've also messaged you the link in the chat pane. For now, I'll go over some of the data that we found to be most powerful. To start, 89% of pilot members reported improved compliance. Because of the free and discounted registrations to our Clery Act trainings, collaborative members have been able to send entire teams to trainings. The program is designed to be flexible to allow us to deliver information and answers to the questions our members are really asking. That flexibility, combined with the close relationship we develop with our members, means that we can host webinars that deal with immediately relevant topics, deliver news, and share resources in real time. So next, 87% of members interviewed were either very satisfied or satisfied with the resources available at the time of the survey. After reviewing the data, we noticed, as Sam mentioned, that lots of members had identified ASR reviews and CSA trainings as areas where they could use help. So in response, we created a process through which collaborative members could receive the annual ASR reviews and follow-up discussions, and we also filmed and released a CSA training video. Almost all of our members have taken advantage of either one or both of these new additions. This highlights why we're so excited to welcome AICCU members to the program. We've learned so much from our pilot members, and we just can't wait to see what questions, needs, and ideas California institutions can bring to the table. So moving on to networking and support, as you can see, 93% of our pilot members said that they would recommend the program to another school. This statistic is really important because it highlights one of the major tenets of the program, which is the creation of an environment and community where institutions were safe to discuss their campus safety issues and get answers. The collaborative program was born out of the idea that colleges and universities wanted to get Clery compliant, and get campus safety right, but they were having trouble getting started, or they didn't have the resources that they thought they needed to do a good job. And we also recognize that lots of institutions were getting it right. So the collaborative was designed to really address all of these issues at the same time, in the more tangible sense by providing training and free resources, but also by connecting schools and creating partnerships both within and between institutions. So I get calls from members all the time with questions about templates for policies or how to handle a particularly sticky student conduct issue. And I can either give them the answer, I could find the answer through someone in the Clery Center's network, or I could refer them to a member who can help or may already have the answer. As a member, as Sam mentioned, you have a direct line to our member services team at the Clery Center, where our biggest job is helping you find the answer to all these questions. And while we do our best to answer every question in-house, sometimes we're just not the best resource. And that's where the program comes in. Because besides a direct line to our team, the collaborative gives you a platform to connect with other schools who are either dealing with the same problem or have already found a solution. So out of all of the great elements of the collaborative, the piece that I think is the most successful is the requirement that cross-departmental teams be created at each of our member institutions. I asked one of my favorite success stories in the program to share her thoughts. She's the Dean of Student Life at a small college here right outside of Philadelphia, and I thought her words probably said it best. So she said, "Simply joining the Clery Collaborative was an important step for us. I think that having the financial backing from our VP of Finance, who essentially gave me the money beyond my budget to join, showed an institutional commitment to Clery and Title IX compliance. For a small institution, this financial commitment has helped to put Clery on the front burner for many people who might otherwise have a more fleeting interest in Clery. In other words, they were concerned that we're compliant, but they're less into the nitty-gritty. For me, this has provided a valuable platform for engaging people in conversations related to the spirit of Clery and going beyond the letter of the law to embracing the spirit of the law in our efforts. We formed a Clery Collaborative Committee with members from student life, residence life, campus safety, and student activities. To our campus, the student activities piece didn't really seem immediately clear, but student activities worked very closely with clubs and organizations and gave us great access for proactive trainings with our CSAs. Because of what we learned through the program, we have separately formed an official Title IX committee with an increased number of deputy coordinators and are in the process of creating an alcohol, drug, and sexual violence prevention task force," end quote. So that being said, it brings us to our last section on the slide, which is self-assessment. At the time of the survey, around half of our members had used a self-assessment tool that Sam discussed to evaluate their current efforts and identify where there was room for improvement. It's important to emphasize here, I think, that we truly believe that compliance with the Clery Act is achievable. The collaborative offers a forum, tools, and support for an institution to take a real and critical look at its efforts to figure out what they need to do to improve. In essence, the program is designed to empower colleges and institutions to institutionalize their efforts and prove that with dedication and teamwork, your institution really can embrace the letter and the spirit of the law. I also wanted to add that one of the most important statistics that we couldn't capture in the survey was the amount of members who, after their first year of membership, valued the program enough to renew for a second year. So as of June of this year, almost 90% of members have renewed their memberships, which we think really speaks towards their happiness with the program and their confidence in its future. So with all of that being said, Veronica, if you wanted to take just a couple of minutes and talk about why AICCU and the Clery Center has partnered in this endeavor to bring the collaborative to California institutions.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, great. I never know if this is working or not. Well, first of all, I wanted to welcome everybody in addition to what Kristen said earlier at the first half of the presentation. But what led AICCU to explore this partnership was really the discussions and actions that have been taking place at the state and federal levels. As most people know, and what Kristen mentioned, is AICCU represents the sector in the state's policy arenas. And this issue of sexual assault on campus and reporting and campus security has been of utmost importance to both policymakers and other leaders in the state. And so when we were lucky enough to encounter the Clery Center, we were really impressed with not only their expertise, but also the variety of resources that they offered their members. So not only training, but also staff support, and also providing our members the ability and the venue to get together to collaborate. We convene some of our professional groups throughout the year, and we find that the hour or two that we give them during our meetings to just talk across the table and discuss best practices and discuss challenges really is valuable. And so we saw that sort of resource is provided through the Clery Act year-round, particularly through their online resources and their webinars and the meetings throughout the year. So we really do hope folks explore this partnership and take advantage of what they offer. We will be working closely with staff of the Clery Center, as mentioned, in terms of putting together the 2 in-person meetings or trainings throughout the year, and also just incorporating their resources within our website and other venues. But I just want to thank the Clery Center. They've been very easy to work with, and they've been great to work with the last, at least probably 6 months we've been in discussion. So thank you to the staff at the Clery Center. I really do hope people take advantage of their expertise and ask questions. This will be available both on the AICCU website and also on the Clery website, and we are all happy to answer any questions that people have. Is there an opportunity, Sam, to answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. All right. So obviously, technology is not in our favor today. But yeah, there's absolutely an opportunity to answer questions. And thank you so much, Veronica, for those really kind words. We're really thrilled to be able to partner with you guys, and really, quite frankly, to leverage expertise that you all have about California's needs specifically. It's something we haven't gone too in-depth with just yet, but one of the inspirations, or one of the best partnerships we had in launching the collaborative, was actually with a private college association here in Pennsylvania, where the Clery Center is located, so the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities of Pennsylvania. And I will say that one of the things that we really enjoyed with that partnership, and continue to enjoy, is the fact that you all have really in-depth insights into what your members need in a comprehensive sense. So that's definitely been something that's added value to the program for our participants, so thank you. As Veronica mentioned, we are available and happy to answer questions. We're just going to go through some brief logistics of how you, if you're interested in the program, how you can learn more, and then we're happy to open it up to questions. I know we've already received some through the question toolbar off to the right-hand side of your screen. So if you have any burning questions, please feel free to type those in. You can also raise your hand if you'd prefer to ask those questions out loud. So just feel free to do that as well through that chat panel. So in terms of what's next, and I know many of you have received information already from AICCU, those custom application materials, but if you need them, again, feel free to contact either Veronica or our team here at the Clery Center. As Veronica mentioned, the partnership with AICCU really started about 6 months ago when we had a discussion about really what we could do to assist California colleges, private colleges and universities as they're trying to navigate existing compliance requirements, stay on top of best practices. And so what's really exciting is that because the collaborative is a program that's really built with those networking and support resources in mind, we really recognize that while this program was designed to foster collaboration across institutions that are in different states and different communities, really amazing collaboration tends to happen in your own backyard as well. And so we want to leverage the collaborative relationships that we know probably already exist in California in terms of campus safety and compliance best practices. And so with that in mind, we did provide a reduced rate for AICCU members specifically, again, to create that community out in California where you guys can really participate fully in the program at a discounted rate. So normally the program would be $3,500 per institution, and we actually have provided a $1,000 per institution discount on that. And like I said before, and Bethany mentioned briefly, it is a flat rate. It covers if you want to have a team of 5, if you want to bring a team of 15, really whoever you identify in that team, and even beyond that, you gain access to the program and to all of the benefits that we've covered today. And so we're really excited to be able to provide that at a lower cost for AICCU's members, and really to members too who we know for $2,500, that's actually a really significant investment. And so we're really thrilled to be able to offer it at a lower rate for you all. So if you're interested in joining the program, all you'll need to do is complete the membership application and the agreement that we provided to AICCU. Like I said, you can request that from us as well if you're interested. It includes information that's specific to private colleges and universities in California. So it'll have that reduced rate ready to go for you. And then finally, before we wrap up and open up for questions, I did want to cover, we've talked a lot about our Clery Act trainings, and we've mentioned that we'll be in California twice next year, which we're thrilled about. I wanted to kind of provide you all with a quick update of what the schedule looks like so far. As you can tell, the 2 trainings that are highlighted in blue is when we'll be in California. So we're really excited in January to have a Southern California training specifically for AICCU members. It'll follow a training that we have in Palm Desert that's open to really anyone from across the country. So we're creating a training specifically for you guys and hope that you all will be able to join us for that. It'll be right following those final regulations for the VAWA amendments to Clery, so it'll be a good time if you're thinking about planning and trying to figure out your response to that. A good opportunity to interface with us, interface with AICCU staff, and our expert faculty members who will be training you for that session. As I mentioned, that will be something that's available for free, up to 3 registrations for anyone who joins the collaborative program. And then other than that, it would be just our standard training rate for those who are not part of the collaborative. And then finally, later in that year, we'll be in Sacramento, California. So again, in partnership with AICCU, we'll be hosting a training at University of the Pacific at McGeorge School of Law. So we're really excited to be back in California twice next year, among our other really exciting training locations. So if you do have any questions about that, feel free to give us a call. But like I said, we're excited to be sort of in the state in January and meet all of you and have a great training experience. So that's our contact information. Happy to open it up to questions. It looks like we've received a few already, so if you have any questions, now's your time to ask those. Let me just see real quick where our first one is. Okay, so it looks like our first question is, where can I find a comprehensive, user-friendly, by name list of the 90+ policy statements required for the annual security report? I'm new to higher education and to the Clery Act after an Army career and in great need of assistance. Well, thank you for that question. I think probably the best place to look would actually be our self-assessment tool. As I mentioned before, it really is a comprehensive resource that we designed to address all Clery Act compliance requirements. And certainly the annual security report is a way of really bringing those all together. So in the tool, which is about 40 pages or so, it's an interactive workbook you can go through and really identify where those policies live on your campus. It gives you tips and techniques to think about how you summarize that in a policy statement. And that's sort of a way to all in one place really see all of the requirements. The other resource I'd recommend that's sort of beyond what we do, but may help you just in terms of getting started. The Department of Education released in 2011 a handbook for campus safety and security reporting. We kind of jokingly refer to it as the Bible of Clery Act compliance around here in the office. It's a little bit out of date in terms of it doesn't include the VAWA amendments to Clery because there are no final regulations for that, and it was released after the last amendments. However, if you're just getting started with Clery, I would definitely recommend taking a look at that, and we can send out in our post-webinar email a link to that resource as well. It's free. It's a PDF handbook that's available online, again, through the Department of Education, and it does provide a very brief, maybe 3 or 4 page checklist for the annual security report, so you can kind of go through and make sure that you have all the basics. And then finally, what I would say too is if you've gone proactively through all those resources and you're still not quite sure, again, as Bethany emphasized, one of the requests that members had that we've added to the program this year is to do an annual security report review. So as you're drafting those pieces, or even if you're just trying to make plans for next year, to look at that, we can go through with you and really identify some areas that you might want to add or improve on. So I hope that answered your question. Looks like we had another one come in as well. And again, just as a reminder, if you have any questions, please feel free to use that question or chat panel. So this question asks, can an addendum or revised version of the annual security report be submitted or made available after the deadline, so that October 1st deadline, that addresses updated or missing policy statements? So this is a really great question. The Department of Education, there's sort of 2 elements to the annual security report and that deadline. So one of them is that you have to provide the annual security report to all incoming, all of your current and prospective students and employees. So that's sort of on the campus side. If you're thinking about how you're going to distribute this to your community, those are the groups that you need to share that information with by October 1st. So we definitely recommend documenting that. If you share it via email, that's something where you're going to have to do a full link, but you can also send out paper copies, or there's flexibility in how you distribute that. In terms of updating the annual security report for your internal community, that's really something we would recommend in all of this, that you document well. What I would say is that your October 1st submission, so the second part of that is to the Department of Education. So things like your statistics, you're actually going to be importing those into a form that the Department of Education sends out, a survey form, every single year. I have candidly never gone through that process myself at an institution, so I'm not quite sure how flexible that is. As I mentioned, the handbook is available, and there's a help desk where that might be a good question for them. But one of the things that the department has emphasized in their conversations with us and their workshops with members and others that I really take to heart is that if you do find an error, or if you find something that is missing or isn't right in your annual security report, you definitely want to make those updates and make a note in the next version of your ASR. However, the October 1st deadline really is pretty hard and set in stone in terms of when you have to get that information out to your community and up to the Department of Education. But certainly making those revisions and noting why you made them in your next annual security report, I think is important to do and to document. Okay, so another question came in from Veronica. So Veronica asked if folks need help as soon as possible on the compliance reports, the annual security report, by October 1st, and want to join the collaborative, can they use the Clery Center's staff expertise within the next week. So we have usually asked that folks give us at least 2 weeks to do that. So what I would say is we can do it on a first-come, first-served basis. But what I would say as well is, we are available for technical assistance. So if you all join the collaborative and you do have questions, we're happy to do as much as we can to help you through that process. If we can't make a full review happen, we're also happy to answer any specific questions you might have as you're pulling together that report or sharing it with your community. So that the long answer or the short answer would be, we will